Okay. So, share screen. There we go.
How are you?
Okay, so today's session is part of a two-part series. This first part really focuses on inclusive design. So how are we building our course content? How are we presenting that to students? And how are we also building for ourselves and making sure that things are, equitable for our students and also equitable for us in the time that we spend looking through assignments and whatnot. So we want to talk a little bit about design today. It'll be followed by another session, I believe on the 4th of October. And that one is focusing on discussion boards and how to create inclusive discussion boards. So if you haven't yet registered for that one, please do. So we'll start today by going through just a little bit of universal design. What is it to build with universal design in mind? And then how does that look when we're building for equity, inclusivity, and accessibility? Emma, take it away.
Oh,
I know, it's like,
it's like one of these things. Sorry.
I know. We're here for all of you.
Okay. So some resources first, to kind of help us work through this. We have the Course Design Hub, which is where we house all of our templates, all of the resources, anything that you would want to look at with like discussion boards, assignments, thinking about universal design. It's all there in the Course Design Hub. We've kind of put all our resources in one place. And so we would encourage you to kind of look through those and really kind of think about how can you perhaps utilize the template to help you design your courses with equity and student success. You can customize all of these materials. You can share them with other people in your department or your interest area, but it's just, this is the place to go for support.
Yes, so for those of you who are joining us online, if I just put the link to self-enroll in the chat, and if you haven't yet enrolled in the hub, I would highly suggest that you do, because the links in today's presentation are all from the hub. If you're not enrolled, then you won't be able to access them. So take a minute and self-enroll. And if you have yet to self-enroll, I know you're in there, Anne, but hold it. Anne is all up in that course. But if you haven't enrolled yet, take time to do so. And it's also just a pretty cool spot to find some really good templates and ideas. Oh, well, I know I'm going to
Go for it.
Yeah. So to find those templates, if you like them, the course itself is view only. If you want to use the templates, you have to go to comments to download them. And so we try to make it easy. Whatever we've made as a template, you can just search for DVC distance education and all of our templates will populate. So if there's anything that Emma and I show you today and you really, really want to use it, you can just go straight to Canvas Commons and search for DVC distance education to access it. If you have not used Canvas Commons and you need more Canvas support, you can either hang out afterwards or we can get you scheduled with our Canvas admin to get some support there.
Okay, so starting with what is inclusive design and what does it mean to kind of use principles of universal design for learning and how that benefits all students in your course, not just students who perhaps have a learning disability or a learning difference. And so when we think about universal design, that's the idea that all students can access all materials. And we think about like the example on here that I think is a really good one, a wheelchair ramp can be used by someone who has a wheelchair, but also someone pushing a stroller, right? So designing universally benefits everyone. And it allows us to create multiple points of entry for our students and thinking always about equity, right? And so how will all my students access the material no matter what their level of mastery is? And we're thinking here about providing like a variety of formats. So having multiple modalities, having things in like an audio format, but also having a transcript, right? Having a video presentation with slides, but also having something that's static. I'm thinking here also about assessment, right? So how am I thinking about authentic application of my assessments? How does that allow students to demonstrate their knowledge in different ways that perhaps feels more comfortable for them? And we're really kind of allowing student voice and ownership over their own learning, so that they feel like anyone who enters this course can feel successful and supportive and feel like the material in the course is tailored to their learning style. I don't know who I'm like, I'm gonna talk here. I'm gonna talk here.
There's people, like, yes, go ahead.
In Canvas, when we subtitle like any video we make,
Yeah.
can they download that transcript?
I believe
Well, captions and
sometimes,
subtitles,
yeah.
transcripts, all three different things.
Okay, I think I'm thinking of captions.
So no, they can't download captions.
Okay.
And actually, that is a perfect segue to our future pop-up learnings, which are all about accessibility.
Okay.
But they can't download captions. So if you wanted them to have like a downloadable something, and then you would likely want a transcript. There are ways, depending on like how you're making those, that you can like easily make that transcript.
Yeah.
But you know, that's something that we can work on and try to produce in the future
Can
too.
we download it, like when we're going through and correcting it, because like we're able to see it as a whole text?
Yeah, so you can, it comes out as a file that's not like an openable file, you know, naturally, yes. But there are like workarounds and hacks for making that work.
Okay.
And I haven't tried it in Studio, but in the past, I have in YouTube just copied and pasted it and like cleaned it up. So I'm not sure if it would work in Studio, but it's definitely worth a try. Yeah, good question. Any questions from online folks before we move into designing for equity? Okay, cool. I think if you turn on your camera, or did you leave the meeting?
No,
Okay, did not make.
I'm just really tired. Like, I can't.
So what do we mean by equity, especially when we're talking about course design? Like we've heard equity in a lot of different spaces, but we're really specifically thinking about equitable course design. And what that really means to us is creating and celebrating diverse representations. Our course represents any kind of student, any person who would possibly be enrolled in our course. They should be seeing their own selves, their own life experiences within our course. So it's more than just diverse imagery. It's more than just, I found a video from a different person this week. It's really taking time to know who your students are and including materials or spaces for them to add themselves to your course. And we'll show you some examples of how you can do that a little bit later today, but start thinking now about like where there's a really good assignment or discussion where I could add just a little bit of my students' personality in there. Where can I give them the power to become their own advocates and own learners and have ownership over the success that they have in this course? And it's not a mirror of the same learning experience you had. I know when I first started teaching, and I think when a lot of people first started teaching, you know, we tend to teach the way that we were taught. But how can we also put our own selves into what we're creating and allow students to, again, put themselves into whatever we design and create as well? This is also a really great space for us to think about how do we further decolonize whatever we are putting out there and creating for our students and for other folks to be a part of. How can we ensure that the materials, the videos, the media that we're including in our course aren't eliciting things that are outside forces from our classroom? Racism, white supremacy, any sort of systemic racism that may come from some of these resources that we're including in our courses. We want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, researching those things, and make sure that they're not going to places that we don't want our students to feel alienated or not included in our course materials. And including more experiences that are just the status quo, allowing for some reading pieces that maybe are not like the best example, but are a great example or are really interesting or are outside of the like realm of quote unquote normal, and including varied types of media to support various entries into learning. And allowing voices from different groups of peoples. And I want to pick on Anne since she's here, but I know Anne just put a call out on her Facebook page looking for different authors to write about music. And I thought that was a great way to include not only your local community, but also to just get other people involved. Like there are tons of musicians out there. that I'm sure, you know, we couldn't even name a third of all of them. And what a great way to include your friends, your family in it, but also to gather voices of people that you may not have known existed and could have been a part of your curriculum. So use the folks that you know, lean on the people who are in your own community too, to start picking out information and bringing in new experiences to what you're designing for your students. And so we want to start by anchoring equity in all of our spaces and knowing that on campus and online, it doesn't matter. Both spaces should be equitable, should have equitable entrance for all of our students, and really leaning on that universal design. Everybody should be able to access whatever it is that you're putting forth, regardless of whether or not they are online, on campus, or in that weird in between. So we have one supportive document for you here, and let me go ahead and put it in the chat. This is our equity guidance. And it's something that has been floating around now since like 2021, and was approved by our academic senate. But it's a way for us to really self-reflect on what we've built in our courses already and see how we can push forward one extra step and make things a little bit more equitable or inclusive. So my word of advice is start from this point forward. So whatever you create from today on, think about, have I included a different perspective? Have I allowed my students to voice their thoughts and opinions when it comes to this topic? Or take a look at the equity guidance and see, is there something in here that aligns with what I'm creating, and maybe I can check off a box there. You know, so if I'm starting my course, maybe you have a late start course and you are just about to send out that welcome letter, make sure that it contains some of these items that are here in our suggested like introductory area. You can scroll through and see lots of different spaces, accessibility, support resources. Some of these are like directly within your course, but some of them are outside, like our ask either here at Pleasant Hill or San Ramon campuses. So really trying to get all of the support to all of the students at any point within your course. So as you build, take a look at this and see, what is one thing I can check off this list as I build this new page or something like that. And keeping in mind those universal design for learning elements, we want to make sure that students are allowed to enter the learning no matter what their skill level is, what their prior experience is, they're able to join at any level. And then this last point, the clearer the expectations, the less questions and redirection is a really good one. And that's actually what we're going to focus on today. How do we make sure that our design, our assignments, our language within our course is so clear that we get less questions, we get less confusion from students, because they will have read everything. They will know, oh, well, you know, I don't understand 2 of these things, but I understand the rest, but I feel comfortable enough to ask questions about these 2 things because I know the process. I have that on the spot support. Things are linked out appropriately and I can access what I need. Any questions before we get into the next topic here? I know that's a lot. It's a lot of thinking. Yeah.
This is a really broad question, but it's something I've been struggling with especially for online courses, as we think of, you know, universal design and accessibility. Like this semester, I put in hypothesis. And I'm like, great, this is awesome. Already, you know, it's like for every single class, I have 2 or 3 students that I can't use this. I have the directions and like, here's the link, here's the guide. I can't see it from my end. So it makes it very hard. And so I'm just like, as we continue to have online classes and we have all these new things that are innovative to, you know, help us bring people together, and we're like, great. And I think there's also this idea that we have that like, well, students are all technology literate. And I feel like my job now is tech support and I am not a great tech person. So I'm just wondering like, how do we, or like how people are addressing that with accessibility as we try to like be more innovative, especially for the students who like need that. And yet we have students who, you know, are not that. And like my job now is tech support. I'm just wondering like how people balance that and how we think of that in universal design for learning. It's like bigger questions.
Right.
I throw that in,
But I see everybody has something they wanna say, go.
Yeah, I mean, I like this updated image of the equity and justice.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a little bit like the technology part, you know, I don't know if it's linear, but it looks like a combination of those. And I mean, one thing I do, because I know the problem you're talking about, I've also experienced that. Is that like I'll do, one, I build, especially in online courses, an extremely long orientation.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that is to do things, this semester I'm doing tech checks where literally all they have to do is I'm using flip video. And God, I love that thing, and I hate it at the time. So I can't even recommend using it, but like this time it's like, just pick up something around you and tell me what it means to you. Because like whatever you're asking them to do is super simple. So really it's just a tech check so that I can figure out who those 2 to 3 students are and help get them on Zoom or get them to ask or get them to places where there's people who can help troubleshoot the technology, whether it's myself or others. So that when we're getting to a high stakes, we're just or even just a low stakes, but in relation to content, then we're just focusing on content, and that seems to help.
Yeah.
Because I can immediately see where things are going. But then on a larger level, so to me, that would be like the equity spot, like how can I minimize what's needed to check who needs the most help? And then, but on the justice part, like, I would really love to see programs at our college that introduce students to the technology early on. So many people are using hypothesis that a student will come across it now and are likely to come across it in their education. So it would be nice on that justice end, you know, to have some of these technologies introduced to then again minimize who's that person you need to outreach to and do more one-on-one tech support with it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's just my experience so far.
I mean, I think too, it's like, we're kind of running into like what you're saying, where a lot of students don't have the digital literacy skills, right, that you're talking about. And so I feel like, especially in my first year classes, like when I teach English 122, I find that I do something similar to Anne, where I have a very long orientation module where the assignment is to practice using the technology, because I use hypothesis all the time. And I try in my own courses to like never use more than 2 external tech tools, like outside of Canvas, because otherwise I'm still, like you said, I'm spending all my time like teaching them how to use the tool and doing tech support instead of focusing on the content. So I picked like, okay, I'm gonna use hypothesis and I'm gonna use like Satori or whatever, like those are my 2 tools that I'm focusing on. And then in our orientation module, we practice using it. I make videos, I hold extra support hours, I have my students submit like a credit, no credit assignment, like, hey, just try out annotating our syllabus, right? Or try out annotating this assignment. And I just want you to like write down, where did you run into problems? What was it like using a new tool? And then I'll kind of do some reflection on how often do you use new tools in your everyday life or in your community, right? What are some of the like holdups that you run into frequently? Like, do you get nervous about using new technology? Do you find that you know where to go to find support? Do you Google things? Do you go to Reddit, right? So I'm asking them to reflect on their own skills as like digital learners. And then we talk about as well, what does it mean to be in college, right? And to engage not only with the content in my course, but also to learn new technology, because that's part of their role now, and they're gonna be asked to do that in their careers. And so it's my hope that like by the end of the semester, my students have not only learned the course content, but they've learned like critical thinking skills about what do I do when I'm using new technology and it doesn't work, right? Like, where do I go for support there? Or how can I make a checklist of steps that I can take to like find resources on my own, right, to help myself? So like learning those more independent skills. I found over the years, as I've been teaching, those become more and more a part of like what I teach my students alongside the course content.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely meant that like my course has changed, right? And the content that I'm teaching changes. And I find that primarily in the first like month of my course, that's where I've like made the largest scale changes around content and like digital literacy skills, if that makes sense.
And it is that digital literacy piece, right? Like
Yeah.
students are coming in, no matter if they're 18 or 80, they're coming in knowing how to check email. But they're not coming in knowing how to access these programs. That's
Mhm.
digital literacy, and we're not outright teaching students how to be digitally literate. And I think that's to speak to what Anne was commenting on. That's a justice piece we have not attained, and I honestly don't know that DVC is ready for that. I don't know if we have the infrastructure for that. But as you both were sharing, I was thinking like, you're creating your own personal spaces of justice within your own classroom and having that lengthy orientation module, which mine also is lengthy because I realize these things every semester, but also like in giving those spaces to practice and giving those spaces for them to be kind to themselves as they learn how to use technology, because it's scary. And now my class, so I used to teach English and now I teach technology. So totally different experience with students using technology, because now it's everything that I do. And I still have students who get in there. I had a student this summer and I still laugh about it because she emailed me and she's like, I don't even know how I emailed you. Like, oh Lord, we're starting from the bottom here in a technology class. This will be fun, but it reminds me that there's plenty of time within my orientation module to get them the resources. So we have resources like we built, and I'll share at the end of the presentation, our technology resource course, which has a lot of those introductory how-tos, not for specific programs because not everybody uses those. So it's more like campus wide. What does everybody use? But thinking about where on campus can they get support, the library, the Ask, student centers, all three of those spaces have hypothesis experts there and have the ability for them to reach out online as well. So if they aren't available to come on campus, but just where can we build in those student on the spot support spaces? So the questions you're getting aren't hypothesis isn't working, what do I do? The questions are, I don't know if I did it right. Can you read my response and give me some feedback? Because they'll at least have learned how to solve their own problem. And I do spend the first like 2 or 3 weeks of my class teaching them how to solve their own problems. And that's, something that I think is valuable in any class and is valuable time spent, because it may not be technology problems. It may be, I don't understand this reading piece. I need to learn how to research how to fully understand this. So if you're giving them the empowerment to solve their own problems, it goes a long way. And a lot of students believe still to this day that their professor has all the answers. Like I don't know about everybody else, but I don't. So teaching them how to research their own question. A lot of them don't know how to Google, and learning how to Google a question is a really key skill. But that's a whole other tangent. Cool. And those of you who are online, feel free to add ideas to the chat or unmute if you want to participate. We would love to hear your thoughts as we move through. But here are some other really good spaces to solve some of these problems, actually. So we're talking about how do we frequently contact our students and give them feedback and support to usher them into these resources, to usher them into these support systems on campus. Announcements is a great way to do that. A lot of folks use announcements, every couple of days or 2-3 times a week on a scheduled basis to tell students, hey, did you have a question about this? Have you tried Googling this to see if you can get the answer that you need? Or I know we're using a new tech tool this week. Don't forget, here are your 4 support systems for finding help as you access this new technology. Same in your gradebook comments. One thing that I've discovered is that you need to remind students to check them. So announcements is a really good place to remind them to check those gradebook comments. But in those gradebook comments, I often will be leaving links to Ask or leaving links to the library, Ask a Librarian, because students who need help may not ask you, but once you're looking at their assignment that they've submitted, you see it. And so that's a really good private space to say, hey, it looks like you might be struggling with this piece. Have you reached out to the librarian to see if they might be able to support you? Or have you dropped into the student center and asked one of the peer tutors for support with this thing? They're a little bit more willing to have a back and forth with you there because it's not as scary as a discussion board, you know, and they know you've already seen their work, so they know you know. And don't forget about that message students who feature. That's a huge valuable resource, and it gives you an idea of how students are struggling and maybe where they're struggling before they even submit that assignment. So you can use it, you know, a day before the assignment is due to message all the students who haven't yet submitted and say, don't forget, our assignment is due tomorrow. Please reach out to me by today if you need assistance or make an appointment, come to my office hour. And you'll get a lot of student responses that say, oh my gosh, I almost forgot, thank you so much. Or actually, I was kind of panicking about it. Can you help me? I'm really stuck. And they may not have come to you otherwise. So it's a really good resource for that, like one-on-one outreach that takes no time at all, because it does email everybody at once, but it looks like an individual email. So it feels really personal. And then group or peer-to-peer work and discussion boards, just giving students the opportunity to also solve their own problems. So it doesn't hurt to also put in a discussion board that's like, what was your experience with hypothesis this week? Or what was your experience going out into the world and taking pictures of items? Did you struggle? How did you feel about screenshotting stuff this week? Was it hard for you? And giving them an opportunity to support each other and say, did anybody feel like they were really great at this work? Can you pop in and support others and give them your tips and tricks? And it's one of the ways that I've actually solved my, not completely, but I've helped to solve my like email deluge from students who don't know how to use technology, is asking other students to pipe up when they know how to do it. When they know what this other student doesn't know, and I know that they know, I just nudge them and say, hey, do you mind like dropping into the discussion board and helping the student out and seeing if they can figure it out? And most of the time, they're delighted to be an expert and help others out. And just a plug for our course again, our orientation module is fully outlined in our the course hub, the design hub, but it's also in comments and you can download it. And I'm going to give you the link to the module right now so you can check it out. But if you like what you see, you can go to comments and download the thing and then pick out the pages that you want. But a lot of our expectations and language for these kinds of things will be there. If you don't know how to use any of these Canvas tools, like the gradebook comments, announcements, or the message students who, this is a really good time for us to become Google Masters as well, and just Google, how do I use Canvas message students who? And Canvas guides are the first thing that pop up, and they're super, super helpful. So our next idea for including students is to demystify contact expectations for them. We are lifting that cognitive load for them and including them in the learning. So we want to make sure that they know how we will be interacting with them, and then that they know how we expect them to interact with each other and how we expect them to reach out to us as well. We are not making anything muddy. We are clearing it up so every student knows exactly how and when and where to ask us questions, or how and when and where to ask other students questions. That way they have their support system outlined for them. No matter how well they know how to use Canvas, no matter if they know how to email you or not, they're going to be able to figure it out with the systems that you put forward. So they're able to initiate contact with you, and maybe that means that you created a page in your orientation module that has your contact information that you'd like them to have. So maybe your email address, or that you want to use Canvas inbox, a Google Voice number. I share a Google Voice number. I know some other folks do. Your office hours information and the link, it's all there. So students have one page, they can go there and they can grab it. These things can also be regularly shared in announcements as reminders, especially if there's large projects or assignments coming up. Link out to that one page. You don't have to type it all out in every announcement. If you already have a page in your orientation module, just link it out in that announcement and say, don't forget, all of my contact information is here. Make an appointment with me, come to my office hour, check out this page, and it's all there. But you can do the same for the ask, for student centers. You can have a student support page in there that has all of that information, and turn them to the student hub and that good stuff as well. So there's a couple of examples of what that might look like here. So one of them is a course communication page in the bottom left here. And then there it just tells you your grading agreements. This is my expectation and I want to be clear. I want to show you. I will have everything graded within, 48 hours, 2 weeks, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you want to commit yourself to. I think 4 weeks is a bit much, it could be, hey, make sure that you honor yourself though. Don't tie yourself to something you can't stick to. But whatever it is, be clear so that when they ask you, did you grade my paper yet?
Right.
You can say, you know what, it sounds like you might need to read our grading agreements again. Here's the link and let me know if you have any questions. And it's all on there. There's no guess, there's no guessing, as to when they're gonna get that feedback back. That's also a really good place to remind them, read your gradebook feedback. After I grade it in 2 weeks' time, read the feedback and then do something with it. And that can also be really clear in a rubrics plan. In your rubrics are grading criteria. So for each assignment that you are going to be grading, giving them consistent rubrics makes everything clear. It's not, for some students, they don't understand how rubrics work, but they know at least it's an anchor that they can read and say, okay, I know these are the expectations. Without that, they don't know what your expectations are and they may be, off on Mars and who knows what they're going to give you as their final project. Grading criteria and rubrics are an amazing way to guide them through your expectations. We do have samples for basic rubrics, basic grading criteria, all within that course design hub as well. And you can copy and paste them. They are just blank templates and you can fill in the blanks. And then the last example here is just put your contact information on the homepage. You'd be surprised how many students get used to just going to that homepage and saying, okay, yep, there it is. Let me just email them really quick. They don't memorize your number, but they know where it is. And they'll just go there and look for it. And it's just quick, fast way to get that information out to them so that they know how to reach out to you.
Okay, so thinking about the bigger picture of designing your whole course for inclusivity. So Crystal gave us some nice examples of where we can specifically intervene with students. And then I want to spend some time talking about, especially in online and hybrid spaces, how do we build the structure and the essence of our course for inclusivity and universal design. So, some things to think about. And for me, teaching in multiple modalities, and especially when I'm teaching asynchronous courses, humanizing my class is how I welcome students in and help them feel safe and help them feel like I can succeed here. So I give space for my students to not just complete our assignments and focus on course content, but to show up as their whole selves. And so I want them to feel like I value them as people, I value their lived experiences, and I want that to be a part of our course. But I also want students to be able to connect with one another outside of just, assignments and hypotheses and tests and things like that. Because students get to do that in in-person courses, right? They come in, they talk, they get to know each other a little bit. And so when we're teaching online or in any kind of online modality, we have to make sure that we're building that intentionally into the course. Another way that I like to think about inclusive design is removing the burden for my students. So I make sure that I demystify expectations, right? I'm very clear about this is what I expect for this assignment. Here's the grading criteria. Here are clear instructions about the different steps you need to walk through to achieve the grading criteria. And I also like to be really transparent with my students about why we're doing something. So because I teach English, I ask my students to annotate all of our readings and I tell them why, right? Annotation helps us with comprehension, it helps us with analysis. And in a hypothesis, we can have conversations about specific parts of the text, which is really important for helping us hear other perspectives and ideas, right? And so in each of my assignments, I have a little section on there that says like the why, or why am I asking you to do this? And I just write a couple sentences that explain like what's important about this work and how it connects to helping them succeed on other assignments. No worries. So a specific example of that humanizing piece, this is from my first year English 122 writing course, where every week I do something called a community ritual, where I ask students to come together as people outside of the course content. And so some examples of things that I've done are like a learning dedication, which is what I'm showing you here, where I ask students just to pick someone who's like inspiring them to pursue a college degree or a career certificate, and post a picture of them and tell us why they're meaningful. I do other things that like we create a class playlist, right? Like, what's your favorite song right now? I want to hear it. Some other things that I've done are like, we talk about comfort food, right? So describe something that you eat that's like culturally important to you. Or that just makes you feel good, right? Or that gives you good memories of your childhood. And so just every week having those spaces where my students can get to know one another, can share a part of their lives, right? Can show up as their whole selves. I think kind of help students feel like they belong here, they're important to us, right? And there's more to learning than just getting a grade.
And I did, so we do have a template for that. I want to show you in just a second, but I also called out our technology resources course because I noticed that Emma had said, since they had to do a photo, she gave them instructions on the spot for how to embed a photo into the discussion board. And a great way to do that is to link out to our technology resources course that has instructions for those things, or to link out directly to the Canvas support page that can show them how to do those things. But if you haven't yet visited our technology resource course, this has replaced all of our like one pagers, how-tos, all of those guides that we had like at the beginning of the pandemic. We just pounded out all of those Google Docs with all the information. We moved them all here now. So you can link students out to this for Canvas support, for Microsoft account support, technology basics. We have a lot of students who are digitally illiterate and don't know how to right click or don't know how to click and drag. This is a really good opportunity for you to support them and send them here so that they know how to take a screenshot, because man, that is really hard sometimes. Or how to use Zoom. Everything that they need to support their like entrance into technology is here. And then hopefully it will teach them how to troubleshoot just a little bit more. Yes.
Sorry, this is a course that students can access, so we
Yes.
can link it in our.
This is totally public. And so if you teach at other campuses too, you could share this, although a lot of it is specific to DVC. And I also made a bit.ly for it, so it's fairly easy to remember. But if you take this, and I'll put this in the chat right now too, but if you take this bit.ly and you link it to your course, students can access it anywhere. This is one of those items that I would blow up all the time as an announcement and be like, are you struggling? Don't forget, you can learn some stuff here. We also still have access to LinkedIn Learning, and Joanne Denning has been regularly sending out emails about that. The amount of introductory information in LinkedIn Learning that we are not using is huge. So I actually leveraged it a lot this summer. It is great. Just a sidebar, but I really like that. And then I want to show off the template that I made from Emma's awesome. So I made this. Hi, I made it without telling you. I made it yesterday. I got excited and I did a thing. So I liked. So many people have asked Emma for a template of how do I use this? How do I build it? So I took the idea and I made this sort of blank template of community ritual. You could change it to whatever you want. It could be community conversation, connection, or like student to student talk time. I don't know, whatever you want it to be. But you can have a topic of focus and an explanation of what it is. And then what are your steps? How do the students interact? Again, we're demystifying, we're breaking down the expectations, even though this is not really like a graded assignment. You still want them to interact in a particular way. So you want to demystify that for them and explain it. Explain how are they getting feedback? How are they being graded? Offer some support. So this is just one template that you can use. And it is in our hub course. So it's linked in the presentation here as well. But you can access it in our course design hub and make it whatever you want it to be. Totally up to you.
Do you give them participation points? when
I
they
do, yeah.
Okay, so it's non-gradable.
It's
They
like,
get 5 points.
It's
for-
graded, but they get 5 points if they do it in reply to their
Exactly.
other peers, yeah.
yeah, and there are a lot of instances like, sorry, I had to refresh, it was doing a thing. We'll just give it a minute. Where you can do participation, you could do, like a check mark, what is it in the grade book? I think it's, incomplete or versus
Yeah,
complete.
that's what I do here, I
Yeah.
do complete or
So it's like for mine, I do what I call them check-ins. But I just do 0, they're worth 0 points, but it's a check or an X, and you have to have the check in order to move on to the next one. So you can do grade goals like that too. There's lots of really awesome stuff all about ungrading that allows students to participate in these less content related spaces.
Yeah. Other ways that we kind of think about inclusivity is thinking about the ways that students are able to initiate interaction with you, and also with their peers, right? And so the community rituals are like an instructor initiated interaction. But for students to be able to reach out to other students, to make study groups, to connect, having like, like a student lounge discussion board. I know some faculty use Discord. I've had success having my students create like a WhatsApp group, where they can text each other and kind of talk that way. But just kind of giving them opportunities to be with each other in community, and share outside of the assignments that you built in your course are really important. Also thinking about the ways that students can interact with one another around your course content, right? So if you're having students complete some textbook chapters for their reading, can you create a discussion board where they talk about it, right? And share where they struggled, where they found something really interesting or exciting, and maybe they can share a link to another resource that connects to what you were talking about, right? Maybe you can build in some kind of small scale group projects or opportunities for peer feedback. I leverage peer feedback a lot in my course because it helps students feel like they have expertise to offer, versus them just needing feedback from you all the time, right? So it kind of lightens your grading load a little bit, and it allows students to feel like they're an authority in your classroom. Oh yeah, go ahead, did you want to add something?
Oh, no.
Okay, sorry.
No, I was just moving the mouse and it made a noise.
And so the examples that you kind of see here are that student space, right? That student lounge. We have like the little kind of check-in, self-assessment. What Crystalla has highlighted here is using inclusive titles, right? And pronouns in your course. And so you're just kind of making space throughout your course to show students that you care, that you value them, and that all of their identities are welcome in your class.
You'd be surprised how many students comment on those small things that you do.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Okay, so this just kind of goes through a couple other kind of last minute things to think about are some of these we've talked about already, right? Like the inclusive examples, explaining the why behind your assignments. But really something that comes up a lot in inclusive design that feels really important is thinking about how you're asking students to complete tasks and if your instructions are clear. Like, are you breaking down tasks into specific steps that they can follow to achieve the outcome that you want? Or are your instructions kind of hidden in a really big paragraph, right? Like a really big block of text. Taking the time to just break it off with some bullet points or to write step 1, step 2, step 3 really reduces that cognitive load. And allows students of all levels of mastery to feel like they can succeed on your assignments. I think also along those same lines, providing examples from students in past classes or examples that you create yourself, even if they're not like A+ work, are really important, right? I find that my students are better prepared to succeed on assignments and produce higher quality work when I give them examples from previous students, even if those examples are B and C work. And maybe I've annotated that assignment and talked about this is where the student has succeeded. This is where they could perhaps, increase something, add more evidence, add more analysis, things like that. But just kind of having the examples there for students to see, this is what it looks like to do well on this assignment is really important. You can also think about having your students submit drafts of assignments in advance in a discussion board, right? It's like in a public place where students can all see their efforts. I think goes a long way towards showing students that you don't need to submit like a beautiful A+ assignment all the time, right? Like, it's okay to struggle, it's okay to learn and grow, and we can look at our examples together in class, as a way to do that successfully.
So we'll close just by learning a little bit more about accessibility and how accessibility also allows for equity within our own spaces. So I know we only have 10 minutes, so I'll kind of jam through, but accessibility is really the heart of our course because it is universal design. When we are designing universally to allow students to access anything wherever they're at, we are inherently creating accessible items. That speaks to creating things that can be read by a screen reader, videos with captions, alternative text in our images. That further includes our students, fights against isolation, and it's not just students with disabilities that use these things. There are students who use captions because they're, feeding a baby at 3 a.m. and they need to be watching a video with captions. There are students who read alternative text. When an image is broken, the alt text shows up and they can at least see what the image was supposed to be. There are a lot of reasons that students would be using these accessibility technology, the assistive technologies that are not always just for disabled students. So what we want to do is offer accessibility through many entrances, and that's like the theme of today, apparently. Like, how many ways can we enter into this material? But we want to first offer it as a Canvas page. That is actually the most accessible way to offer information. Not only is it the most accessible, it's also the most equitable because every student has access to Canvas. So they can access it, and then Canvas itself is built in a way in which making accessible material is simple compared to other things. You could also offer it as a Word doc because you could also make your Word doc accessible, or a Google Doc as well. If you use the headings and you use the bullet points or numbers as appropriate. If you have a student who uses Braille, Word doc is great for Braille. And if you have a student who uses Braille, then you're likely already working with DSS, but DSS can also support you and that student to create materials that are most accessible. PowerPoint or Google Slides are also options. However, it gets more and more inaccessible as we move down this line. If you are just making your own PowerPoint and dropping text boxes wherever you so choose and like throwing in images, that's actually very inaccessible. A screen reader will read the order of the text boxes in the order in which you add them. So if you add your last text box first, students who are using a screen reader are going to hear everything backwards. And they're not going to know which item was the first item that you wanted them to understand in the PowerPoint. Which is why, again, a Canvas page is more accessible because it's linear, right? You can share that PowerPoint, but you need to make sure the reading order of those slides is in the correct order. And in order to do that, you have to use the accessibility features in PowerPoint, or you can reach out and work with somebody in DSS to learn more about that. The third option, you could also jump into our DVC accessibility course and learn how to do it yourself. And then PDF, sure, is an option. It is inaccessible and is inherently built to be inaccessible, and we really recommend that you don't use them because they are just not accessible to most students. They are great for printing. And you could say, hey, do you want to print a copy of this? Here's a PDF. And then in parentheses, this PDF is not accessible. Sure, you could do that. But we highly recommend that instead that you turn it into a Canvas page or a document that they can use a screen reader to access or access on their phone. Opening up a PDF on your phone is also a hot mess. So we're thinking about students who are not only students with disabilities, but also students who are accessing the majority of your material from their phone, because that's what they're doing. So if we build it all on the Canvas page, it's the most accessible option. And if you don't know how to make your Canvas pages accessible, you can attend my sessions later in October to learn how to do that, or you can join the course that Carrie and I built and walk yourself through that process. We don't have time for it. Just kidding, we're skipping that because we don't have time. So I want to get you to the resources. So I mentioned our accessibility course, and I actually don't know if I put it in here, so I will find a link to that and put it in here. But our next pop-up learning is part 2 of this series, which is student engagement through better discussion boards. So feel free to register for that session if you'd like to. Our two-part accessibility series is the last week of October and that second week of November. So if you're new to accessibility and you want to learn more, this is, I mean, it is a continuation, I guess, of student engagement, but more focusing on accessibility. And then our last session this semester is going to be our POMP showcase for our peer online mentorship program, so that our folks who have graduated from our program can show off their amazing courses, share some templates with everybody. And this is the only one that is virtual only. The other three are hybrid. We shared the online equity guidance, so it's there for you to access if you'd like to use it as you go through, reflect on your own creation and how you can make things more equitable online and just with using technology. Our underground technology support course. This one is the one I clicked on that has all the Zoom resources, that has the Microsoft how-tos, all of that jazz is in this course. It is public, like I mentioned. Any student can access it. And I highly recommend that you check your old pages and your old welcome letter to make sure that you're not linked out to our old support pages and instead are using this. And then there's just a few more DVC, oh, I do have the accessibility course, a few more DVC resources. So here's our accessibility course. If you are new to accessibility and would like to learn more about how do I make accessible materials, how do I edit my Word document to make it accessible, or if you need 2.5 hours of flex credit, that's also an option for you. We also have our racial justice tools and materials from our racial justice task force, and then a guide to understanding oppression, which also came from SES and racial justice. That was very valuable in informing our presentation here and making sure that we are being as inclusive as possible in all that we do at DVC. So we have just a few minutes for questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that we can ask questions if there are any. If you don't have any questions, feel free to duck out. But thank you for coming. Okay. All right. Well, if you have questions in the future, please reach out. Like I mentioned, the recording and the presentation will be shared in our upcoming DE newsletter. And have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye, everyone.